46. Majority rule is democracy's political structure because in most places and nations, most adults have the social experience and generous, humble, loving character to desire freedom of all, to make their own decisions to benefit their own families. Democracy protectors want your freedom to choose a religion or not, your health care options, sexual orientation, political opinions, and even gender identity that I might fully disagree with or disapprove of, but you own you and your choices. I don't. Don't I want your hands and rules off of my life too? What is love thy neighbor as thyself except democracy, freedom, respect, decency? In the so-called self-claimed democracies, folks imagine that their constitutions designed, then also successfully structured government of majority, self-rule. We think, thank God I don't live in one of the huge number of nations where a minority rides roughshod over the majority, enforcing certain cultural, religious, moral, military, and financial dictates against most because we fewer are superior, know better, and flat got the bucks and guns to be everybody's bosses. No tyranny in your great nation, right? Well, you complacent had better take a closer, harder look at your national and provincial power structure before denying that it is right now stealing many of your freedoms and very possibly all of your future. I've covered critical American arenas fully captured by bribery, the illegal, world-ending nuclear arms race, 40,000 annual killings, mostly by the 420 million guns that dealers bribed Congress to allow unrestricted sales of, and this single industrialized nation's rejection of national health care rights, disempowered, denied by gigantic campaign dough from the sick care-for-profit corporations. Our Supreme Court was personally selected by a small, rich, opinionated minority to reverse a half-century of family reproductive autonomy desired by the 70% majority. 6 of 9 justices were also corruptly selected to open the public leader bribery spigot to a cataract that promises to finish destroying most Americans' dwindling rights and freedoms. Once giant money's media propagandizes single sides of each issue to enrich or morally please the bribing players, your very brains, not to mention votes, belong to them. As I write, Republican state legislatures roar through 400 bills attacking transgender children, including maturing teens whose very lives depend on the health care that their every single new law was written to fully prohibit. No one denies that 25% of Americans view transgender aspirations as crazy, immoral, and invalid. All 400 bills they like. This bigoted minority takeover is a classic example of why democracy is so essential everywhere. Because over 70% of people are usually both knowledgeable and kind enough to passionately reject all blaming and hurting others, and in fact causing deaths for extremely stupid, bad, and outrageously bossy reasons. Do I claim that an American 25 to 30% has found a way to outmaneuver the 70 to 75% for political, legal, medical power? Well, their vote power within one political party is outsized, but the actual seizure of ruling, dictatorial, political, and legal power is now being accomplished by one single man. A bigoted culture warrior and minority attacker in control of much of a national political party's bribe money, now manipulating every Republican-controlled state legislature to pass his edicts to remove critical transgender health care power from parents, children, and doctors. Manipulating? No, forcing. Over 99% of Republican-majority state legislators vote through his bills, or the couple of his guys who pass out the party billion that flows from his fans' pockets will cut off every legislator no voter. They'll crushingly lose most of their next campaign's TV commercial money, and of course, their fat jobs. He could be indicted and convicted 5 times, a real possibility, and lose hard to Joe Biden. Yet still vastly advance for another decade his bribery scheme to become the effective dictator of America. Don't forget, his Supreme Court lives and destroys on. His minority party could keep most state legislatures and the American Congress for decades for one reason. You don't campaign to outlaw gerrymandering of 435 congressional districts that permits either political party in temporary state control to redraw their entire state's districts to pack the out-of-power party voters into 6 landslide for them districts, while your party wins with a cool 53% in 12. Now, wait for your majority of big black robes to kill every lawsuit against this travesty, having been chosen as partisans, not in the least impartial constitutionalists, in fact, not judges at all. Exactly why our movement to pack in a few more democracy justices is America's only chance to lead the rescue of humanity and your family. Think chain reaction, then switch theirs for ours. I'm about to tell transgenders' American story to prove that, yes, Donald, your American carnage, in fact, corruption, today rockets ignorance, hate, dictatorship, harm, and death to the moon. Listeners the world over turn me off anytime, just long enough to ask, how many life and rights wrecking examples of tyranny can I find in my power player trampled nation? What single abuse does not their money buy, gaining 1,000 times my public money for them? Who allows this thievery and harm, permits its legality, refuses to oppose it? Oh my God, I do. Old Steve demands action from who else? Who else would rescue my family if I just sit down and shut up? The moral of this terrible, true transgender story that I'm about to tell: you make transgender teens, their parents and doctors, again and forever the rightful democratic family rulers of their frightening, dangerous world. Instead of disempowering human beings, fire inhuman, dirty money Donald. One religion's Bible also proclaims homosexuality evil, the exact natural trait the creator of life bestowed upon 10% of thousands of animals and also humans. For the last 20 years, gay marriage approval climbed in America from minority to high majority endorsement. Just before its capture by Trump, the Supreme Court agreed. Now let's talk about transgenders. Not 10%, around 1% of American children develop powerful feelings very early, quite different than the classic romantic same-sex attraction to others that reveals so many to be genetically, rightfully gay. Instead, some 8, 10, and 12-year-olds develop an intense, desperate identification with the other gender inside of them that their external genitalia belies. The boys love dolls. The girls have machismo, want to wrestle. Parents soon become aware of their profound differences, but school quickly becomes the little outcast's horror show. This story is best told in scenarios, best case and critically worst case. That usually very accurately wannabe transgender 10-year-old will need a constant decade of loving care and help, but he or she never gets it. Appalled parents never get over their quite baseless moral and social revulsion to their child's non-conforming oddity. School society is often exponentially more bigoted, ignorant, and abusive to all very different small minorities. Parents usually hear directly from the youngster that they are the opposite sex inside. But exactly like our metastasizing millions of culture warriors, they ignorantly, sternly suppress or forbid the child's only reality and hope. Many of their forsaken children then OD on pills or cut their wrists. Attempted suicide ER visits multiply. After failed attempts, some hope remains, but now factor in our 420 million guns, a loaded one in Daddy's drawer. Tomorrow morning, under the pillow, your child's brains soak into the mattress. Yet, for a couple of decades, the far more helped transgender's teen suicide rate has dropped dramatically. The child learns on the internet that he or she is essentially normal and desperately needs their right of self-determination. The right transgender support and medical therapy could lift their misery over a long time all the way to permanent happiness, proven by research. Other studies discovering the vast majority of frustrated, failed transgenders to become deeply, sometimes fatally depressed. By total contrast, nearly all fully completing conversion to their real, emotional, new physical sex become healthy and happy. Ignorant opponents imagine and proclaim, with zero facts, the exact opposite, that obstructing them is not only morally righteous but healthy, whereas advancing sex change would make them sick and sad. Never mind the damn kid testimony. Then death. In any case, God's justice, His vengeance, right? The child, parents, and doctors know nothing. I must boss and stop them all. Many years in jail for all who break my rules over my inferiors. In our happy, humane scenario, our legal and enjoyed until now becoming banned transgender options provided counseling, doctor specialists on top of the field, evaluation of speed versus patient delay, hormones when appropriate, Regular, careful experimentation with public dress, grooming, manner, and medical wisdom about physical sex change, which may for years be reconsidered until surgery, actually not recommended until closer to adulthood. This good and right trajectory still remains tough enough to kill quite a few. Well, that's nothing. Now, a single, evil, ignorant, all financially and politically powerful man is well on his deliberate way to torturing and killing thousands of innocent children, also deservedly devastating their sinful, sacrilegious family forever. First, most of those 400 state bills propose to kill not some, but 100% of transgender care of children were written by National Party bosses, not state Republican lawmakers, who were put on notice that their hundreds of millions of campaign dollars poured in from one man's massive donation factory will instantly be jerked away from thousands of state senators and representatives very fast after registering single no votes for wasting trannies. The same deal was offered a few years ago to anyone daring to oppose bathroom bills that restricted students to facilities for their birth sex only. Wherever you may be in gender transition, we order you restricted to the public toilet, restricted to the genitals we restrict you to. Anything else, and you perverts only went in there to seduce or rape my child. All meddling with God's original anatomy for you, we deem immoral, evil. Our special religion is now legislated to be government theocracy. Never mind our Constitution that forbids government-ordered religion. Your democratic free choice is forbidden, replaced with our choice for you. Is this to be our passionate preached persuasion or appeal? Hell no! We've got the money to buy the lawmaker majority to force our demands that utter strangers' formerly personal choices and rights be forever destroyed. Our opinion is now law against you. Your opinion is nothing. We dictate all to all. Why don't they rename their party Americans Against Democracy? Citizens for Dictatorship. Listen to any in-depth radio report detail anti-transgender new laws. Also felony punishable would be all transgender youth trajectory counseling. Absolutely no hormones for transition may be prescribed, sold, or taken. All surgery before legal independent adulthood is outlawed by us high judges. Never mind that transgender life-saving need and reality is usually determined by parents, child, counselors, and doctors years earlier. Our religion trumps all medical decision-making by every other human being who fails to convert, not to the sex of their choice, but to the special religion we define as ours, and, damn you, yours. Anti-transsexuals have plenty more to say. You children, parents, and doctors who always before determine transgender need and help for the young merely manipulate and abuse the little victims into your evil choice and idea for them. In all your cases, we now kill all healthcare autonomy. We are forever your new moral and medical and sexuality dictators. This from the political party of the 100-year credo to butt government out of all people's free private business. Why history's most gigantic flip-flop in exactly 2016? One man's money. Go over the 100 most murderous regimes in world history. Name one that was not a one-man military and money dictatorship. Each emperor or dictator, psychologically and often genetically grown to fully inhuman, total aggression, possessing the absolute financial and military power that no one in history until you and I could confiscate. Corrupted each absolutely. Each top commander conscripted or just persuaded nations of men and boys to savage everywhere with unlimited weapons to murder up to 1 billion innocents. Why? Largely to steal mile-high piles of cash for himself and his crony nobles. 10,000 historians describe absolute power corrupting absolutely. But if the single writer that details your every law to end that military and bribery power remains obscure, humanity could die very fast. If my listeners or someone's do not explode their numbers and political actions, a love bomb strong enough to blow away the extinction machine, I see enormous evidence, an iron chain reaction, that Earth's entire human population is scheduled to die within a very few years to decades at the most. In 1963, military contractors were thrilled by the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, who had desperately kept the American fighting force in Vietnam quite small. Yet 3/4 of the federal budget for war was still too small for Murder Incorporated. So LBJ's Democratic Party was bribed to explode our Asian war by 2,000%. This totally aggressive attack into multiple nations was entirely to prop up our hand-picked, totally corrupt, undemocratic military dictatorship against a communist revolt supported by 75% of the population of South Vietnam. The U.S. weapons dealers, captured politicians, and military had schemed to mount a giant foreign war for 15 years in order to flex and test dozens of magnificent and magnificently enriching weapon systems. Never mind bleeding out our treasury and 57,000 18 to 22-year-old boys. Less important yet were the 2 million Vietnamese slaughtered. The 95% civilians fire and blast bomb to death were routinely labeled gooks, vermin, not human. Leaders directed murder for power and money, but fired up taxpayers and soldiers with racist hate propaganda. For this war, and also the full description of thousands of wars. 40 years later, President Bush invaded Iraq on the pretext that Saddam Hussein was preparing to attack American cities with nukes and poisons and germs on missiles. Actually, our government paid a known Iraqi conman named Curveball $1.5 million to invent research confirmation. His elaborate lies were presented to, but not believed by the United Nations, whose rejection did not slow the American invasion by a day. Because the massive bribes from weapons merchants to our party in power required a huge war to enrich them. The quid pro quo. 7,000 Americans and 1 million Iraqis were killed. The Vietnam and Iraq attacks were two of history's thousands of unnecessary foreign invasions by world slaughter-size armies conducted for one man's political power and glory and the enrichment of his henchmen, weapons dealers, and all they share the wealth with in return for bleeding the people's money and their doomed teenagers. Damn near every word I've written and spoken nails a single, terrifying, but also infinitely hopeful, challenging truth. Without a private money to public leaders ban, plus enforcement of our 191 nation treaty to outlaw nuclear weapons and delivery systems, and another treaty to cut every world attack army to border defenses only, single dictators will wreak infinite arsenals soon upon all 8 billion humans, and abandon our need to find water and food. Just for the money, honey. What's gone on without a break for 10,000 years will multiply thousands of times in the tiny number of years, promising mass thirst, hunger, and economy deaths to then explode every single weapon everywhere, thrown into the last hopeless battles for survival. Today, giant weaponry explodes in hunger, thirst, and hate in 49 armed conflicts. Somebody gotta transfer every bit of that savage, sad, desperate, obscenely armed and financed power over to our emergency rescue projects. Yesterday, who dat? Often single men controlling money to the moon are after more than just 10 times more money or more nations to conquer. Alexander Putin demands a glorious restored Russian empire. He's also murdered 100 political opponents because their challenges exploded his fear and anger. Any man given the military or financial power to destroy multitudes will, from high and often genetically aberrant aggression and power-ruined character, develop malicious, armed superiority and bigoted hatred of inferiors deserving only death. My every speech describes the million soldiers' brutal actions commanded by single, sick with power dictators, gathering and also given every financial, propaganda, and military technology tool of Holocaust. You'll notice that 100 of my every 100 stories end with your two alternatives. Sit back and ignore the monsters masterminding your own violent extinction, or boom and enforce comprehensive disarmament law with your New World friends. Now, the one man who sent 6,000 cult followers, many fully armed, into the U.S. Congress meeting about to certify his election defeat, sends hundreds of millions of dollars to thousands of state legislators with his orders to burn thousands of sissy boys who think they're girls, or everyone will lose their fat damn jobs without his TV campaign cash. Many Republican state legislators have confessed to persistent interviewers, I actually don't like any of those 400 bills, but my political survival requires my vote. Should we offer them clothespins for their noses before the roll call vote? May I suggest that their next consultation be a letter from you? Enclose the baby flash drive of these speeches. What else do they need? A few sentences max. Not so dear politician. Collect all the TV ad mega millions you want. representative or senator will still field the candidate to fire your ass if you vote to explode transgender abuse and suicide. Will your retirement be restful? When you hear that hundreds of transgenders denied therapy, blew their brains out, thanks to your failed attempt to keep your fat bribes and job, how you gonna sleep at night? Remember, dear listener, that my game is your help saving more than 100 here and 1,000 there, but all 8 billion plus your children. So every day spend just a few minutes researching the 1,000th way that dirty money will soon destroy your family. Today's new knowledge, exactly like my other speeches, each based on last night's radio world horrors made terminal by private money, ruining public government. Such new knowledge will also become your ever greater emotional and political will to stop all the money, honey. It's so simple, just not easy. Who all you truly love, you fight to protect them so they don't suffer and die. Exactly the same way that you'll look out for number one, right? And that billion working against us? Every word I wrote and spoke says exactly how to stop everyone. 99.9% family lovers too, who will rush to your side when you and your billion partners show them who's boss now. As we all will be when every top dog's party, his story, is over. As we replace every single dirty dollar with equal time debate public campaign finance, we will be achieving the many other laws and projects to save our world. How? Because we're winning back all that rescue tax money that the jackals can't ever steal again to keep electing genocidal crooks and pawns with all those bribes that you outlawed. I've only played one bizarre game since I was 13. How do the power and riches players waste us all? What's every gear in their machine? What new laws would dismantle its structure, stop its combustion? Look at all that world damage. How soon fatal? Exactly what laws, projects, what kind of machine would build our long, just, kind life support and fulfillment? Now just persuade the world of all that, Steve. Grab $1 billion to take over for your inspiring but tiring little self. For every family member, especially dependent child, that you dearly love, you can regain your right and ability to care for, to protect them. And while they live long and prosper, instead of suffering hard and dying fast, they'll have to finish what we started. This whole family's job is a never we shrink century, because every damn year the players will scheme a comeback, another takeover. So at bedtime, your little girl says, "Mommy or Daddy, tell me a story." Say, "Tonight, darling, do you mind if I just tell you the truth? Today I wrote our national senators that we need a tax break to buy a better home roof water tank. You wrote a Supreme Court justice to please order our president to obey our treaty to ban nuclear weapons worldwide. We both are asking friends to write letters themselves. I'm proud of both of us. Tomorrow night she'll get a real story, But tonight you bored her to slumber with politics. Did she hear the grim reality or a Grimm's fairy tale? No matter. Her breathing is slow and deep. Her eyes are closed. Her faint smile glows. Is your last whisper for your hopes, your love, your peace, or hers? And they all lived happily ever after. This speech focused on transgender rights and worth savagely abused by a powerful minority in America. This world radio addict has heard reports from many dozens of nations that abuse their gay populations also. Parent bigots everywhere literally throw helpless young teens out of their homes for expressing the sexual emotions and needs that God created them with, making sexual authority bigots, including Bible writers that condemn homosexuals, liars about the God they never knew, understood, or talked to. So listeners, as needed, heal yourself and your society and government to love all as equal and good, unless they hurt others, which you better not.